you're ready. Thank you.
Could I ask that these be circulated to the councillors present, please?
Absolutely. Isabel will just come and collect those from you. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, tihe Māori ora, no Aotearoa ahau, I whānau I roto I Horana, ko tarawera te maunga, ko tarawera te roto, ko Fred Stevens ahau, tēnā koutou katoa. I just started there with just a brief mihi, just explaining that I was born in Holland. A lot of people, when they see my home at Lake Tarawera, think I'm probably Māori, and I usually answer them, I say, well, unless a waka went astray, it's probably not likely, but I've been living at Lake Tarawera for over 30 years now, and been involved in the planning processes from pretty well day dot when I got there under the Old Town and Country Planning Act. Probably the biggest thing we were involved in was getting the Lakes A zone set up. Prior to our involvement, the area around the Tarawera Lakes was zoned as general farmland. And at that time, that's the way the council wanted that zoning to remain. I've circulated a decision, an interim decision of the Environment Court by Judge Bollard, late Judge Bollard, and I just want to read that because it really, nothing has changed since then, and it provides the basis for what I think the future of Tarawera, which was his vision as well. The lake's environment is a precious heritage to be cherished and protected. At the district planning level, commensurately careful consideration must be afforded because of the environment's fragile nature, the ease with which the natural character of the areas can be altered, whether sporadically located or by ongoing expansion of existing settlements, and comparative difficulty of stemming, let alone reversing, established changes and accompanying trends. By these remarks, we do not mean that to convey that a dead hand must be placed upon the Tarawera Lakes and their catchments, designed to maintain the status quo at all costs. What must be done is to analyse the degree of change that can be accommodated within the planning period so that the natural physical resources of the area will be sustainably managed. This is the important bit, the inherent attributes of the areas must not become eroded, either in character or by degree, with an outcome evidencing non-sustainability and a discounted legacy for future generations. So that was back in 1998 when the Environment Court invited the council to prepare provisions to ensure that that unique environment was sustainably managed for future generations. I'm here today with my president of the Rotorua Lakes Protection Society hat on. Just a little bit of history. I formed the group back in the sort of mid-90s, and at that time we called ourselves Kaitiaki Tarawera because we wanted to acknowledge the Māori history of the area and the fact that we embraced that the history and what had come before us. Unfortunately, some local Māori took exception to us using that term kaitiaki, and as the planning sort of process ensued, we talked with them and we said, well, look, you know, come on board with us, because they hadn't made submissions on the plan, and so they did. They came in. We agreed we changed our name to Rotorua Lakes Protection Society. They would take that customary role as kaitiaki of the area. And it was great because when we went to the Environment Court, made our opening submissions, Anaru Rangahiwi was there and did the karakia and the opening remarks on behalf of our society. So, you know, it was a good partnership, and hopefully that will continue into the future. I just talk again, the Tarawera Lakes area is a distinct landscape planning unit and was developed by the Society and adopted by Council as the Lakes A Zone. When we say the Tarawera Lakes area, what we mean is you take Mount Tarawera as the focus, and it's the 7 surrounding lakes. So we've got Lake Romahana, Lake Tarawera, Lake Okataina, Lake Tikitapu, Lake Rotakakehi, Lake Okaraka, and also Lake Okaro. And we developed that landscape unit, which we call the Tarawera Lakes Area. Council have adopted as the Lakes A Zone, because it is a discrete unit with a discrete boundary where you've got a largely intact landscape that's largely unmodified and can be protected as a discrete little planning unit. What we're worried about is that the provisions of the spatial plan are providing for additional development in that lakes area. And unlike the Lakes A Zone, which was, you know, there was landscape architects, planners, all these consultants came together, did studies and reports, and on the basis of that, the provisions were drawn up. Now what we've got is a spatial plan where it hasn't had that same level of scrutiny, and it's really just on a whim of, you know, 1 or 2 people's responses at some workshop somewhere that council have said that some people want more housing at Lake Okaraka, for example. And what our society is really concerned about is that this document has the potential to be used as a sort of a high-level planning document from which decisions will be made when we get to the review of the Lakes A Zone. And I don't think there's enough meat in this document to be able to do that. It really, to me, it just looks like a glossy brochure. It's not, doesn't have the, you know, I'm just concerned about how council intend to use the spatial plan. See, one of the, I mean, I've spent, you know, a good 20 years of my life in Environment Court and the High Court and council submissions. I've got a shed full of A4 folders and things, and the problem I have is that every 10 years when there's a plan review, I've got to start all over again. And it's even worse now because council's now got a policy where rather than doing 10-yearly reviews of plans, they'll do plan changes as needs arise. So you know, it's, and plus the whole RMA framework's changed so much that it's much more difficult for groups like ourselves to be involved in that process. So what we're doing as a society is we're looking at another tier of protection which goes above that sort of district planning model. And what we've been looking at, our ultimate game would be to see that Tarawera Lakes area as a World Heritage Site. We suggested that back in the, after the Lakes A Zone was set up. Unfortunately, iwi did not embrace that idea because it thought it might limit the opportunities for development. However, I think we need to sort of get that dialogue going again, because if anything, I think it will enhance the opportunities for development, because that area is so special. It's the jewel in the crown of Rotorua. Rotorua has always been built on tourism, and it always will be. And if you start spoiling those areas, and that's the only area we've got like that actually, if you put more development in there that's unnecessary and inappropriate, you're going to spoil what you have in the foundation for the future. And something like a World Heritage Site or possibly even a national park model would just be amazing for Rotorua prosperity going forward to the future. So it's a bit short-sighted to, the way I see the spatial plan, to me it's a document that's been quickly drafted in response to the housing crisis in Auckland. It's been done quickly by council as an opportunity to capitalise on getting some of those people from Auckland to come to Rotorua to promote economic growth, without taking into consideration, you know, what those special areas of Rotorua mean for the future of Rotorua. And if I could just conclude, that lack of regard for our precious environments is not the Rotorua way, and the spatial plan should be a high-level visionary document that sets a long-term vision to shape our place and our future. And unfortunately, it falls far short of that. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. Got it.
Thank you very much, Fred. Questions around the table? Are there any? Yes, Ms. Mohi.
Tēnā koe, Fred. Thank you for the submission. Just one question. You mentioned the potential to create a World Heritage Site over Tarawera, and that you're of the view, that you had concerns raised by the Tūharangi, I'm guessing it's Tūharangi and Ngāti Rangitikei, who saw it more as an impediment to them reoccupying the areas, I'm guessing is what their primary desire is to do, which would mean development for homes, marae, talk about those things. So I'm quite curious as how you see that it'll actually benefit them. I hear your wider statement about benefiting Rotorua, but how would it actually benefit them?
Okay, well, when we went through that district plan process and we had iwi on board with us, Tūharangi primarily, Tūharangi our iwi, we managed through that process, or they managed to get structure plans set up for some of their landlocked places around the lake. They managed to get the marae zone set up. They managed to get a papakainga housing zone set up at the start of Spencer Road. So that was all part of that collaborative process. Albi talked to Anaru for years about, the Rotorua Trail, for example. I said it's a wonderful opportunity to put in New Zealand's first cultural walk, where you can walk from marae, meeting house type, overnight stay, put a hangi in, have the elders come in at night by walk or whatever. And, so New Zealand doesn't have that. And a World Heritage Site it recognises areas that are significant in terms of environment, in terms of history, in terms of geology, and also in terms of culture. So if anything, it just says this is a really important area. And I just think, we saw a while back Tūharangi, they wanted to put 5-star spa hotels at each of the overnight stops on the walking trail. Now, to me, that's an inappropriate development for Tarawera. A rack railway up Mount Tarawera, for example, which was Rangitikei promoted a few years back. Those aren't things that fit with the tapu and the Māori of the mountain. But I think there's a real potential for iwi and for Rotorua to look at some sort of high-level protection, and that can only boost tourism and prosperity and how people see that area as being special.
Kia ora. And I agree with you in part. I guess, and I'm coming from, a tangata whenua perspective, the inability to have developed over time is what's driving a lot of this. So I guess I can see the conflict is between a community who've had the benefit of development and are now seeking, solace from that, versus another part of the community and the tangata whenua who have not had that benefit and want to now have that benefit, and it's finding that balance. I agree some of the ideas may be a bit off the wall, but I think we need to be a bit more open to allowing people to have that journey. Yeah, so that's all. Kia ora. Tēnā.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Kia ora, Fred. As well as an environmental advocate, you're also an architect. And so what do you say to the contention from other submitters that done right, residential development, such as the formerly consented Crater Lake development, can actually reduce the nutrient discharge from land to the lake and still be in keeping with the environment?
There are other mechanisms out there to protect water quality, and that's really the role of the regional councils through their regional plans, like they're doing with the plan change in Rotorua to limit stock numbers on rural land. So that's a better mechanism than putting houses on land to stop that runoff, because putting houses on creates other problems. Now, you asked the question, can we sensitively design houses to fit into that landscape? I'm saying yes, we can, but the Environment Court and the Lakes A zone has already been, they've done landscape studies and panoramas, and they've looked at where those houses can go. They've already decided what the thresholds are in terms of bush settlement type living, lake settlement, less sensitive rural. So the framework is already there. There's still potential for development within that framework, but what we're saying is maybe there's potential for more, but you need to do a pretty thorough analysis to make sure what Judge Bollard said there doesn't get unraveled. So, and at this stage, I don't think there is a mandate to do that. And obviously, although the spatial plan's saying there's room for more houses, there hasn't been the proper analysis done to, to justify that.
Actually going to draw a close there. Our next three speakers are all from Tarawera, so the questions, I know Councillor Gould and Councillor Kent also have questions on this. Otherwise, we're not going to manage to keep to time. We're already running a bit late. Thank you very much, Fred.
Kia ora.
So we have Tony Withers, and that's on page 63. Thank you, Tony. If you'd like to come and join us, you'll get a 5-minute bell, and please just push the purple button on the microphone each time you speak. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, ko Dr. Tony Withers, aho. I'm a scientist here in Rotorua at Scion, previously the Forest Research Institute. I've been a resident for the Rotorua Lakes for the last 20 years, and I've been a resident of Lake Okaraka for the last 5 years. I've brought up my 2 children in the community, and they've attended the Lake Okaraka preschool, and we've really enjoyed our time living in that community. I'm also actively involved in the community where I work in the Takatapu Reserve Restoration, in the Forest and Bird Society, and I'm here to object to the inclusion of Plains Farm at Lake Okaraka. I don't believe that it's a suitable area for immediate subdivision as was proposed in the draft spatial plan. In particular, I don't believe that it's the right place to meet your objective, homes that meet our needs. So there's a number of documents available to you. I haven't copied them all here today, but in 2011, the acclaimed Wildlands consultants assessed in detail all the Rotorua lakes for landscape and natural character values in order to provide a baseline on which future development could be compared. In addition, a 2012 report is available on the protected natural areas of the Rotorua district, and it lists areas proposed for development. It includes this Plains Farm as including a high ecological value site, in particular a wetland, and this wetland is home to not only rare and endangered but vulnerable birds including spotless crate, dabchicks and pied stilts. So this is Lake Okaraka, and down the bottom here you have Plains Farm. This red area here is the wetland that has been agreed by DOC as being of very high ecological value. Plains Farm also borders onto 3 more scenic reserves, the Lake Okaraka Marginal Strip, through which there's a beautiful walkway, the Tikatapu Reserve, which is also being administered for DOC, very nearby in here for endangered mistletoe. Therefore, I'd like to propose that this flat area of Plains Farm, which is included on that page 19, is going to be an unsuitable area for housing development because it's so low-lying and because it's already a protected natural area. Conservation covenants are what is recommended for any privately owned areas such as this needing protection. Furthermore, the lakeshore to which this proposed subdivision borders has already been classified as being natural character dominant. I've coloured here in green from the report showing what portion of the Lake Okaraka shoreline is natural character dominant. The red areas are alternatively characterised as a much less desirable form, which is called development prominent. You'll see that the entire shoreline bordering Plains Farm is currently described as natural character dominant landscape type. So should this area be developed, you would be creating an irreversible decrease in landscape character, which would be highly detrimental. You would be irreversibly moving it towards development prominent landscape type, visible from the entire lake. As I live in the community, I really value the community spirit of that area. It is really quite small, and apart from the increase in numbers of holiday makers between Christmas and middle of January, The rest of the time it is a very quiet settlement. You can expect to know your neighbours. Within a few months you will learn their names. All the children know each other and they play. Adults jog, they walk their dogs, and children enjoy all the reserve areas. I don't believe that this relaxed and safe environment would be enhanced. I believe it would be detrimentally impacted should housing more than double the number of houses in that community. However, what worries me the most is that the proposed subdivision, which I've now coloured there in yellow, it actually backs onto the Lake Okaraka Scenic Reserve. This marked area has an underlying geography which includes 2 minor fault lines. It's these fault lines that have caused the area to have such a striking and beautiful scenery, with very steep bush-clad cliffs and valley sides that we all know and recognise. But so steep are these cliffs that up behind Plains Farm, here in the middle of the Lake Okaraka Reserve, the reserve drops from over 600 metres above sea level down to 400 metres above sea level in less than half a kilometre. Now this steep angle I've calculated as being 1 to 2.5. This ratio is the same as the top of Baldwin Street in Dunedin, which you all know is our most famous, steepest street. So what's more, I did an analysis of the soil profiles of the Rotorua region, and there's some wonderful resources available. This particular soil typing was done in 1979 by a local soil scientist. And I have hatched here what he has classified as a type of soil known as Okaraka steepland soil. And it's quite clearly in all those most stunning places that we all know and love, those gorgeous steep hillsides covered in bush. Well, that's an actual soil type. And before you grow alarmed and say, well, that's not relevant, what I'm about to tell you, no other houses in the Lake Okaraka settlement have been built. Actually, that's not true. There might be just one, but no other houses have been built on this Okaraka steepland soil type. And there is a reason for this. In fact, in your own files, there exists a property file caution note for Plains Farm itself. I'm going to read from this. Hazards Officer Don McCartney has written about Plains Farm. The area is very prone to severe slipping and erosion. I quote previous Rotorua Lakes Divisional Engineer Andy Bell as well. The proposed development will involve considerable earthworks, increased stormwater runoff, and of major concern is the possibility that a major slip, similar to that adjacent to the site, could destroy a large portion of the development and result in considerable loss of life. I quote your own Rotorua Lakes Council file 7011/70. So the runoff from the Lake Okaraka Scenic Reserve is right across where you're proposing to subdivide Plains Farm at a number of points. The water runs off these massive cliffs and into the lake. There's a large area that runs east across the proposed subdivision, down these big steep hills and out through that wetland, as you would expect. However, there's another one in this total valley, in this large valley here, that runs north. And it runs across the Tikatapu Reserve, where it's caused significant runoff issues in the past year. It also runs over private land and down Wattle Grove. There's been no provision made for how you're going to redirect this significant amount of water that runs off these cliffs. I live there, and I've been there when significant rainfall events have happened, and I've always wondered why Wattle Grove would be 6 inches deep in rainwater running during these events, and my children would be running out there and playing in it as if it were a rapid. And the reason is because you have a massive catchment area up above these cliffs that you can't even see from down here, but the catchment area is so great that the water can be absolutely catastrophic. What's more, I went for a walk on the farm after getting permission from the farm manager, and this entire valley is filled with massive ignimbrite boulders, and they've been washed down off this huge hill over the last tens and thousands of years. So I just truly believe that if you naively went ahead with this spatial plan without considering some of these factors, that the council would really live to regret it. I do believe there would be some small areas of Rotorua soil that would not suffer quite so badly. However, the proposed land use for these Rotorua sandy loam soils, the recommended land use type for that kind of soil is for farming, but using minimum tillage methods, or for forestry. And that's because it's a type of soil that is very prone to erosion during rainfall events. So I'd just like to wrap up and say that if you proceed with this subdivision, I think you're going against some of the recommendations in your own council files, and it would need to be proceed with extreme caution, and I'd suggest not at all.
Thank you, Dr. Withers, for your extremely well-researched submission. Councillor Kent has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I congratulate you, Dr. Withers, on your submission, and I would like to see copies of what you've actually presented, and I think all councillors would. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other? I'll allow one short question if there are any. No. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Withers, and yes, we would.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate
I'll prepare
copies.
them.
Yes.
Is Monday soon enough for those?
Oh, that's fine. The staff will arrange that with you. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. William Smith, and that's on page 59. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Tēnā koutou, katoa, ko William Smith, aho. My grandparents became residents of Lake Okereke and Rotorua in the 1960s. The strongest sense of time and place of my childhood rests in the memories of long periods outdoors at the lake in the 1970s with extended family, contained within a very small, relatively isolated but self-reliant community. Much of these features and opportunities still exist today to the benefit of my children and the citizens of Rotorua and visitors alike. My father, Jack, has been a full-time resident of Lake Okereke since 2001 and was heavily engaged with the establishment of the Lake Okereke Catchment Management Action Plan of 2004. Professionally, I'm the Chief Executive of Wairaka Land Company, a Crown-owned entity that is at the beginning stages of delivering a community for 10,000 people in the PM's electorate of Mount Albert in Auckland. I have a large amount of experience with urban regeneration, and I'd like to speak a little bit about that today. Your own vision, Vision 2030, could in fact be taken right out of our urban regeneration vision for Wairaka in Auckland. I commend you on the work that was done to create Vision 2030 for Rotorua, and I think the strategy of urban consolidation is entirely appropriate for your city. I do find that overall in the spatial plan that there's a sense of this divergence. There's both a discussion about urban consolidation, but then there's also a discussion about decentralized communities, Nongatahaha, and other communities that are mentioned here as little satellite communities that would grow. It is in fact the opposite of urban consolidation. So when I read the overall document, I find it's contradictory in that it is not strong with its focus that was represented in the Vision 2030 strategy, which I found to be a very encouraging and appropriate and probably affordable for Rotorua. When I look at isolated communities such as at Hamiwana, for instance, or Lake Okereke, and knowing the cost of urban development and infrastructure in particular, I struggle to see how this small town can focus both on urban consolidation and on creating communities that are isolated with all the amenities that they need, including schools and roads that properly connect up these communities, water, wastewater, stormwater, etc. I think the Okeraka and the Tarawera Lakes area and the Lakes A area, I commend Fred and others and yourselves and your predecessors for the work that was done to create the Lakes A area. I think it is entirely appropriate, and I have had a lot of my career in the United States, and in going to southern New Hampshire, New Hampshire has 900 lakes. In southern New Hampshire, I have some friends that have a little lake house like ours in a way. I used to go there from Boston, and today, when I went there a couple of years ago, the suburbs have been brought to that lake, and they no longer exhibit the qualities of the visitation that occurred 30 or 40 years ago. And the difference between New Hampshire and here is, in New Hampshire you can drive another 50 miles and be at Lake Winnipesaukee, where it is still the same as it was 50 or 100 years ago. Here, if you drive 50 miles, you're in Taupo. You're at a different lake system. And there are only 11 lakes here. 900 lakes in New Hampshire, 11 here. These are the only 11 you have. We're not making any more lakes. And especially as Fred said earlier, this town is based, its markets itself with a considerable amount of investment, I might add, around the world as a place where that natural beauty of these lakes is something you market globally within New Zealand's clean green branding. And to extend housing community to Okeraka, for example, and other such isolated examples within the spatial plan, I think is inconsistent with the Vision 2030. I think it lacks focus and is probably unaffordable. And I do see a great need and opportunity for creating more intensive, attractive, master planned urban housing in the centre of Rotorua, perhaps between Eat Street and the new mall. There is promising legislation potentially this year around urban development authorities, and that should be watched with interest here, I would think, where that legislation could be used to get your strategy of urban consolidation going in your central city. There are a number of other sites that are identified in the spatial plan that are on the edge of the city that are greenfield sites. And I would say it only takes 30 hectares of master planned land in Rotorua to create an attractive 5,000 person suburb. And when you look at Rotorua's central population of a little over 50,000, that's 10% gain. You only need to do that a couple of times and you've got a 20% population increase. And that can be, and then you've got considerable Housing New Zealand stock, and they're very interested in building warm and dry homes. And there's a minister in charge of that at the moment who is on a tear. He is determined to get that going. And that, I think, is a massive opportunity for everyone here, where all the infrastructure exists, all the community exists, all the social infrastructure exists in what you have. There is no need to go anywhere outside these city limits to achieve your economic development goals. You need focus, and I think leaving the lakes as they are, that little toehold of a community, those lakes, is enough. They should be. I applaud Fred's suggestion of a national park. I think that is a wonderful idea, as well as certainly for the Plains Farm. It's ideal for forestry or for trees, and certainly there are big opportunities now emerging for carbon credits as well as forestry that would support both a national park potentially and an outcome for farmers that want an exit from their farming business that is much more attractive for the community and for the environment. Lake water quality, of course, is still not where it needs to be. It is considerably higher than the target, and this is a sort of a losing battle, a death by 1,000 cuts. We're certainly a future for these farms in this Lakesay area needs to happen so that we can rectify that for the long term. So look, in summary, thanks for the opportunity again to be involved in commenting on the draft spatial plan. We think that amendments should be made to the spatial plan to better recognise the unique aspects of the Rotorua environment that need to be retained and protected. And Lake Okereke is a strong example of this. Place more emphasis on the 2030 plan to sustainably and more affordably consolidate growth and economic and social development around urban areas such as the Rotorua Central Business Districts and existing suburbs. Avoid growth at Lake Okereke and other lakes and other isolated communities that are on the plan that are potential to detract from visual amenity, landscape, environmental values of the lake that underpin Rotorua's vibrant tourism industry. Look, and I think Judge Bollard's, the late Judge Bollard's Environment Court decision of '98, which Fred mentioned, is a good reminder to how important the legacy of past councils have been. That was strongly taken on board to create the Lakesay area. And the Lakesay area is a very dominant and very special piece of legislation that I think will hold up and prove to be incredibly valuable and stand the test of time. And credit to those that have gone before you and to those out there in the community that have been a part of that. So overall, I think the spatial plan has just had a bit of mission creep, and it lacks the focus that is represented in your great work around Vision 2030, and I suggest that some changes need to be made to get that focus back. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll allow one question. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your submission. Your comments about the urban redevelopment side of things I found very, very interesting and will take to heart. I have one slight issue that I keep hearing people saying that sort of commercial forestry seems to go in hand with enhancing a lake environment. And I would actually question that very largely. If anyone has actually recently taken a ride down to Taupo, you will see the destruction and devastation along the highway caused by commercial forestry. And if you actually do a little bit of investigation, you will find that around Lake Taupo, I believe they are curtailing commercial forestry operation because of runoff. Have you considered that aspect when you consider forestry as enhancing an environment?
I wouldn't recommend it around the lakeshore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for your thorough presentation and submission today. Now, I'll just call Christine Coe back. Thank you, Christine, if you'd like to join us again. Page 52, everyone. And again, if you would like some questions, you will need to leave a little bit of time at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Christine Koeaho. Our family has been over 70 years associated with Lake Okereke and as a landowner. I have professional background in urban, rural and spatial planning. In politics, in governance, and as Chair and Commissioner of the Haureki Gulf Islands District Plan Review and Resource Consent hearings. I've been a member of the Tarawera Lakes Protection Society for over 20 years, and I endorse the preceding three speakers today. New Zealand and Rotorua are marketed globally as 100% pure, clean and green. Is this a reality or a charade? Where is the leadership to demonstrate that Rotorua walks the talk? My submission is to request that Council not support this draft spatial plan and particularly in respect to the Rotorua Lakes area. In particular, I do not agree with it as it relates to qualities of life-sustaining resources, clean air, clean water, and land. It will not achieve Rotorua's tourism potential and sustainable economic development. It will not provide for Rotorua's housing need, as has been identified by Mr. Smith. It will damage heavily the goose that lays the golden egg. It will not provide for enhancing the natural environment and natural ecology. It does not recognise the outstanding natural landscapes that have been identified by Dr. Withers, nor of the lakes as of national significance, as was identified in Judge Bollard's decision. By way of example, the plan locates a new area of housing and community development. Dr. Withers has outlined that this is in an area of high ecological significance that has not been identified through the spatial plan. It's also in an area of land instability that is not identified. Further, the draft spatial plan has very little, if any, connection with the United Nations Global Compact Cities Programme, to which Rotorua Lakes Council is a signatory. What is the council doing trying to develop new housing and a new community centre at Lake Okaraka? It is a mere distraction from the real issues, the hard issues facing Rotorua. Not based on research or evidence. It will not provide for resilience to meet the 21st century challenges. It does not fit in with the vision 2030 identified by Mr. Smith. I just would like to remind you again of a sentence from the Judge Bollard's decision. The inherent, I'm quote, the inherent attributes of the areas must not become eroded either in character or by degree, with the outcome evidencing non-sustainability and a discounted legacy for future generations. The spatial plan flies in the face of this case law. New thinking is required to address the pressing issues. Why not create a vision for Rotorua as a national and global exemplar of sustainable living? New Zealand is a signatory to the Paris Agreement and has targets to meet. This government has signalled that climate change and meeting its CO2 emission targets is a priority. It's worth thinking about. What are Rotorua's opportunities? Following the Paris Agreement, there was 35 MPs, cross-party MPs in New Zealand who contracted Vivid Economics, a UK company, to look into scenarios whereby New Zealand can meet its carbon emission targets. Its report, Net Zero in New Zealand, published this year, examines shifts in land use patterns to include significant afforestation and to offset emissions, plantations that could cover 1.6 million hectares by 2050. Expensive? Well, the Minister of Forests, Shane Jones, has already signalled that, and as Regional Development Minister too, a regional fund for planting up to 1 million trees per year. As Rotorua Lakes Council talking with government, Lake Okaraka, for example, and the retiring of Plains Farm could be revegetated. And I answer the question from the councillor regarding afforestation. We're talking about indigenous revegetation that is not there for return on financial investment. It's there for tourism, for the ecological benefit, the environmental and the lungs of the environment that this will provide for tourism and for Rotorua. And I'm talking here about the visual catchment of the lake for revegetation and with Indigenous. Further up the top, where it's not visually, could be forestation for farm forestry purposes. I agree that there is a devastating effect visually after felling. But how would this be done? Air New Zealand is looking to spearhead a scheme to fund private sector planting in exchange for carbon credit generated. The New Zealand Herald last week focused on this. There are new economies being set up through the natural environment which promotes tourism, and Rotorua could pick up on this. Air New Zealand might well be a starter. The best option to enhance lake water quality is revegetation. If this council's serious about the lake's quality, it will retire farming and revegetate with Indigenous, not put residential there, which is known to add additional pollutants. It's about leadership at the city level. It's about doing some more work and making the right connections with people and corporations. Rotorua Lakes Council could establish itself as an exemplar nationally in living the talk, 100% clean, green New Zealand. What better attraction for Rotorua's tourism and its wider economy? What better way to enhance the quality of our life-giving resources of air, water and land? Who better to provide the lead for your council than a former Minister of Conservation, your Mayor, Steve Chadwick? To sum up, the scene was set in the decision of Judge Bollard in 1998. The council of the time responded with the Lakes A Zone that established the legacy we all enjoy today, that is a significant tourist attraction that has a high rating in TripAdvisor. It remains there for present and future generations, if we choose. It's a matter of the spatial plan reinforcing the appropriate way to go. My submission is that it should keep development out of this precious Lakes A Zone. Your council, by its decision on the spatial plan, has the opportunity to leave a rich legacy, as your forebears did 18 years ago. Please exercise this opportunity wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Now, a very short question, Councillor Donaldson, because we're starting to have a bit of time slipping.
Conscious of time, Madam Chair, I can't let you go without an answer to one of your many questions, Christine. Minister Jones is here to meet with Council tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. That was brief. And thank you very much, Ms. Christine Coy, for your presentation, submission today. Okay, next we have Dr. Kepper Morgan on page 36. If you'd like to please come and join us. Thank you, Dr. Morgan. You'll hear a bell at 5 minutes, just to give you a heads up. If you wish to have some questions, you will need to leave some time before your 10 minutes is up. And the mic is already on. If it goes off, just push the purple button to restart.
Ai, kia ora tātou. Ko matawhaura te maunga, ko te roto ehu te moana, ko whakahau te tangata, he taniwha ngā tangata, he paruparu ngā kai. Kia ora tātou, ngā mihi kia koutou, te tepu, ngā kai whakawā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. So, thank you for making some time for Ngāti Mākino to present on the spatial plan. We are supportive of it generally, but we have some particular comments we'd like to point out. So, Ngāti Mākino Iwi Authority may not be well known at this table, primarily because our territories are from Maketu to Marata, and coming inland to only include Rotorua. And given that there's only a small amount of development at Rotorua, most of our involvement is more at the coast. However, we do have a significant interest, I think. For us, I guess this spatial plan represents an opportunity to ensure that our aspirations are also included, given that the area we're talking about is largely undeveloped. However, we own a significant amount of the forest, both indigenous forest in terms of ownership of DOC reserves, but also the ownership of the commercial forest, which was just being talked about. So I might just touch on that at the moment. We're looking at doing research to see how we can enhance our commercial forestry interests. We don't own the forest itself, we own the land underneath, and we're looking at ways of influencing the way that that commercial forestry is undertaken so that we can optimise the benefits offered by pine, but also look at the companion species that work best with pine, learning about that from the indigenous peoples in North America so that we can identify the native species that best replicate those companion species behaviours, and we'll get a mix that we're hoping will be a sustainable forest. That's quite a long time frame research project, probably 5 years, but certainly relevant within the time frame of this spatial plan. So I'll just punch through the objectives and our responses briefly. The first one is around the lakeside communities. We support the development of these lakeside communities as communities, with the priorities being set within those communities as to what's appropriate. Housing needs for our iwi and hapu are considered in the spatial plan, but we're not sure they're fully understood. We have a lot of people that don't live at home. I think with the trends we're seeing in the urban centres, both here and overseas, there's likely a lot of our people will want to return home if the housing is available and there are employment opportunities. And Ngāti Maki Noa plan to provide both of those, but we wouldn't like the spatial plan to be an impediment to our aspirations. You'll notice there's probably a few typos in this because I borrowed Ngāti Pikiao's submission and mixed it up, and Ngāti Pikiao is still there in a few places. But Mākino and Pikiao are quite closely related at the hip, and in fact some people find it hard to distinguish between us. we do have an overlap, but our territories and our influence, I guess, are expressed more strongly in those two different locations. Okay, so coming to objective 3, enhance our playgrounds and environment. We also take issue with the word playground. It suggests a free-for-all, and definitely Aotearoa is not a free-for-all. We have aspirations around its integrity and quality and retaining or building the cultural relevance of places in there, and the idea that it's a playground to be run amok in is not what we would want to be advancing. This is one of the issues I dealt with as CEO of Te Rūnanga Ngāti Pikiao in the 90s around rafting the Okere Falls, and that continues to be culturally offensive to people that know what is in that location. It's like setting up a motocross track through your cemetery in town here. But that's just a point to make. When you use words like making it an adventure playground, people respond and think that they can behave in the way adventurers might, with little regard for that environment. Okay, so moving to the lake edges, we believe that in terms of the wastewater scheme that Council's currently doing, there can probably be improvements. The two things that we see is the capacity of the wastewater scheme that's being built is relatively constrained in terms of expansion to cater for a larger population. And coming back to my earlier point, we anticipate that our people will want to come home, both because they're pushed, but also because we want to create an environment that's attractive to them. And if that's going to be constrained by inadequately planned infrastructure, that's quite a serious impediment. The other aspect of it is that we believe our lakes are of the utmost importance, and that these wastewater systems should be designed to be safe to fail, which means that what you put in the pipes should be as it should present as little a risk to the receiving environment should there be a leak for some reason or break or something as possible. So pre-treatment, which we have adopted, is the go, but there's pre-treatment and there's pre-treatment, and if we attempt to cost cut, we'll end up with the wrong end of the pre-treatment schematic. And I'm also aware that I don't think there's a big cost difference in the quality of pre-treatment you can achieve, and maybe the decision around Rotorua should be revisited. We know for sure that most of the Rotorua community are unhappy with the option they've been left with, and we believe that because biolytics wasn't given as an opportunity alongside the step or grinder pumps, that they were shortchanged. So maybe council can look at that, given that this is going to be a big issue in the future. Okay, we want to be able to do development other than just leasing our land for others to develop. And so there are suggestions in both ours and Ngāti Pikiao's submissions around light industrial and other zonings that are appropriate for different activities. In terms of tourism, we have speed limits that we believe there's inconsistencies evident in the way they're set, given that the spatial plan covers preferred traffic routes and so on. We believe the importance of the traffic route on State Highway 33 needs to be acknowledged. 30. State Highway 30. There's very heavy traffic going through there. Maybe the speed limits need to be reconsidered to reduce those. But a bypass might also be more effective given the tourism traffic that's on those roads and the winding nature. Because when you combine high-speed trucks with slow tourists who are looking at the scenery, and the fact that we don't have footpaths along most of our lake margins, you've got a recipe for one of our children being run over, or cars colliding with heavy vehicles. And you know, the speed limit is something that council can do something about earlier, and hopefully they will, to avoid a potential tragedy. Okay, coming to the end, strengthening transportation links, lower the speed limits, consider a bypass, and conclusions. We believe that as a key representative of Ngāti Mākeno and a representative of our other affiliated iwi and hapu, that the future planning for Rotorua district is important. It should be a very serious consideration, and we believe that we have some ideas to contribute further, and we believe that our submission, in the first instance, that we have something to say, and we should be included in ongoing discussions should be included. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Dr. Kepa. One question, Councillor Gould.
On your written submission on page under the objective 3, you quote the word playground. What word should be used instead of playground in our spatial plan?
Okay, well, I guess it's the playground word is probably from a marketing perspective of how we can attract tourism business and things like that. And I think the word playground sort of reflects this free-for-all. I think maybe a word that's underlining the respect that should be given to the cultural context that people are entering into. I think the quality of the lakes and the surrounding forest, and that is very much due to the management of iwi, and maybe the recognition should be in terms of using even a Māori word, given that we're a bilingual city. So I certainly won't recommend the word myself, but I think it's something that District Council could, or Lakes Council could consult with iwi on to get an appropriate word that would serve a number of purposes. It would reinforce the respect needed to be paid to tangata whenua, and it would also expand people's vocabulary, and it would reinforce the bilingual city objectives. So I think that's an opportunity for Lakes Council to pursue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan. We will move on now.
Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. I'd like to welcome Nasa Steed from Toi Moana, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and Councillor Thurston. Lovely to have you join us today. So, thank you very much for that. You have 10 minutes and we will give you the 5-minute bell. And if you would... You know the rules. Well done, Councillor Thurston. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. I rau rangatira mai, kui mai, koro mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nō reira I māti ato te tau I whakakahi manake, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Madam Chair, I can smell the sausage rolls burning, so we'll be pretty swift in our presentation. Firstly, can I extend apologies from Councillor Thompson, who's the chair of our Regional Direction and Delivery Committee, and likewise Councillor Winters and Councillor Tahana. And I'm delighted to have with me today our Programme Leader for Statutory Policy, Nasa Steed, who would be well known to everyone here at Rotorua Lakes Council. Thank you on behalf of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Toi Moana, for the opportunity to provide feedback on the draft Rotorua Spatial Plan. I think you'll find our comments are reasonably positive. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council supports the plan as an opportunity to, 1, consider specific pressures and needs of your Rotorua community for the next 30 years, and it also acknowledges that you're about to commence long-term planning for infrastructure servicing and funding, and it's an opportunity to socialise with the Rotorua community where and how the Rotorua Lakes Council thinks development will take shape. We, as Toi Moana Bay of Plenty Regional Council, recognise the plan is aspirational in nature and fully acknowledge the work ahead to ensure that identified growth areas have adequate infrastructure servicing and the major funding decisions that these involve. Regional Council's feedback notes the highly aspirational nature of those assumptions and the information used to support the level of growth anticipated by the plan. Madam Chair, I've made available to you and to the committee clerk a summary of our submission, so that should be guided, so as to guide your deliberations. But essentially the key points to make on the Regional Council's submission are that the Regional Council supports the overall intent of your spatial plan as an opportunity to guide strategic direction for future development of Rotorua and infrastructure investment decisions for this community. I must say at this point that the Regional Council does oppose the statement that the Regional Council plan changes are reducing farming areas. I draw to your attention the fact that Plan Change 10 sets out quite clearly to reduce nitrogen losses from farming activity within the catchment, and we all know the reasons for that. In many cases, farms are choosing to implement good management practices and are continuing to operate in a viable manner whilst complying with the rules associated with Plan Change 10. We seek deletion of the first sentence of the farmland section in your document and request that you insert the following sentence to the end of that section, and I quote, "Land use change to implement good management practices is required to enhance lake water quality for future generations." The spatial plan uses a number of figures around the projected growth, population and housing requirements of our community. The Property Economics Report has assessed 3 scenarios. They have used and consulted the Burl High Unrestricted, the Burl Medium and the Stats New Zealand High. However, the plan focuses on the Burl High Unrestricted outcomes. For example, the plan projects are providing for 17,000 additional homes, which equates to 68% net growth over the double the current population. It is unclear why this scenario has been used over the more conservative scenarios. While Regional Council Toi Moana acknowledges the need to prepare and plan for growth, the Property Economics Report states, quote, "Analysis showed there is sufficient zone capacity within the existing residential zone provision, namely Rotorua, to satisfy the future residential growth scenarios and provide a balanced brownfield/greenfield development pathway." This report contradicts the high unrestrained growth scenario figures being promoted by the plan. Given infrastructure planning and funding needs to be planned well in advance, it seems a high risk to you, the Rotorua Lakes Council, to base growth needs on the Burl high unrestricted scenario. Regional Council Toi Moana supports infill and intensification as a viable option within existing urban areas. The Regional Council also supports enabling development, but we don't want to see a sprawl approach focused on greenfield development that could compound issues already stifling growth in the city. The Property Economics Report states greenfield development is considered an easier approach to deliver for council and developers. However, given Rotorua existing land inefficiencies, such as an approach would amplify current issues by delivering more of the same and compound the inefficient development of Rotorua land resource. I'm on the home straight. Regional Council supports the intent of Objective 3, and in particular water quality as the top environmental priority for the district. We all know that. We support the need to protect and enhance water quality and the importance of synergy with nutrient management approaches across lake catchments throughout our respective plans. Further to this, there is a lack of recognition of air quality as an environmental principle that needs to be enhanced as the city grows. Thus increasing the size of the Rotorua airshed, which in turn will provide challenges to meet the maximum number of yearly exceedances, we seek an amendment to Objective 3 supporting text to recognise air quality as a significant issue in the city. Regional Council Toi Moana supports changing existing industrial areas transitioning to other uses, in particular the relocation of heavy industrial use sites from the residential neighbourhoods out of the Ngāpuna, Ōwhata and Linmore residential areas. An example of poor planning was allowing the former Lumbercube site to be situated in close proximity to a residential neighbourhood. Care needs to be taken with the establishment of residential activity on industrial land. There is the risk of contamination resulting from industrial activity within or adjoining the proposed site. Can I just stress my final comments being that we, the Regional Council, yet again state that we wish to seek to work collaboratively with you all as the Rotorua Lakes Council to implement the spatial plan. And if I can just leave one take-home message with everyone today, an expression that I'm hearing quite regularly at the moment in terms of our lakes, our lake quality, and that is that our lakes are the problem and the solution is the land. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Councillor Thurston. Now I have a question from Councillor Donaldson.
Kia ora. I just wanted to question your concerns around the projected growth scenarios, and we sit here as a district looking to the north where I think it's widely accepted that planning didn't foresee the projected growth or the growth that has occurred, and infrastructure is struggling or scrambling to keep up. So in your planner's view, do we plan for a worst case scenario or a best case, and if you accept that growth is a best case scenario, high growth, which should we be allowing for in a spatial plan?
Okay, can I defer to Nissa on this one? Nissa, you did the work on this.
Yeah, sure, thank you. I think the questions primarily based on the research that's relied upon for this spatial plan, and the Property Economics Report, which is 2017, has stated quite clearly that there's sufficient residential zone land, industrial and commercial to cater for growth in the city, but then the high unrestricted is obviously, it's aspirational and we acknowledge that, but it seems to contradict that research, what it clearly does. We acknowledge that the District Council, the Lakes Council, is wanting to promote growth, but at the same time we need to be careful because we've seen with Tauranga and the Western Bay the very high costs involved with servicing those new growth areas. It needs to be planned for well in advance, and that's why we support the need for the 30-year infrastructure plan to ensure that those servicing costs are well assessed and the risks associated with them, are taken into account well in advance by the council.
So supplementary to that, I guess, some of the thinking that's gone into this is that the spatial plan is makes the business case for that infrastructure investment, and if we, regardless of where we have the capacity for that additional residential growth, we will need the supporting infrastructure, and so you need to be making a case for the growth that's likely to occur. Do you accept that?
Yes, I do. I accept that. Also that the case needs to be based on some robust research, and I think there is given the costs, the high costs involved, it's fair to say that further research could be warranted.
One final question, Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just a question, because like Councillor Donaldson, I'm a bit confused on why you are believing that these projections are unrealistic. You've asked for further evidence. Where else would you like us to get those evidence apart from with Beryl? And then another simple question, is the Bay of Plenty Regional Council not expecting for and aspiring for growth in Rotorua as well?
Sorry. So there are a number of firms, reputable firms that can do the research, in addition to those that have been relied upon to date. And I think that, the council, regional council, does support aspirational objectives and support growth. We do across the region, and that's why we get behind Bay Connections. We just, I guess, when there is research and information relied upon for growth and contradicts one another, then it poses questions, and that's essentially what we're doing. We're raising those questions for your thought as well, because it will be the future generations that will be bearing the costs associated with the growth.
And if I can just say, the whole of the regional council, Councillor Tapsell, aspires to see huge growth in this area, and they're all fully supportive of everything that's being done in Rotorua. And I sometimes tire of some of the criticism I hear of the regional council with regards to relationships, but I can't fault the relationships that I have with key staff within RLC and fellow politicians and colleagues around this table. So I place that on record, but I find it pretty tiresome that you have to keep repeating that statement.
Couldn't have said it better, Councillor Thurston, and thank you both very much for your submission
and
today.
And a very Merry Christmas to you all.
And a very Merry Christmas, yes. I've resisted saying that to anybody so far this month. Now, our next speaker is Ros Moorhead. If you'd like to come down, please, Roslyn. That's page 84, everyone. Thank you. And I do apologise for cutting the questions short. It's just that we have a SPNF meeting at 1 that we're going to be recommencing, and we'll end up with no lunchtime, which doesn't make for happy councillors. So thanks, Ros. And you've heard the drill, 5-minute bell and microphone. Great.
Kia ora tātou, my name's Rosla Moorhead. I represent a wide interest group out at Eastside. We formed as part of the Lumber Cube saga a couple of years ago, as most of you will probably know. I'm here today with Peter State from the Ngāpuna community and Hope Morrison also from that area. They're here in support of some of the initiatives and some of the submissions that we are making, but they're not here to speak for Ngāpuna. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for speaking today. We're supportive of the plan generally. Most of our submissions you'll have there written, and most of it's just questions and things for thinking towards the future. Growth is inevitable, but it must be appropriate. And nowhere was that more relevant than what happened with the Lumber Cube matter, where we had inappropriate industry that's been there for a long, long time. As the city's grown out, these things, it happened. So, but that has been the case previously, I believe, in Mamaku, Nongataha over the years, and so it's just a repeat of history repeating itself as we grow out. The way we live, work and play is changing. We've got a lot of growth and development all through Rotorua at the moment. We've got lots of commercial hubs and other interests, tourism, etc. going on. So it's really important to look forward to the future and realise that, you know, we're not Tauranga, we're not a retail hub. Retail is dead, and there are different ways that we can perhaps enhance our community for everybody. So we're really asking questions. I won't go over our submissions, I'm conscious of time. I'd just like to say that it's about ensuring growth and development is managed. So that's around infrastructure, environmental effects and so on. And ensuring that growth is not unsustainable and ad hoc, and development for the sake of it. I acknowledge that there's planning that needs to be given consideration, and 10, 20, 30 years is a long time. It's hard to focus on or know what we're going to look like in the future. Much has already been said on these issues, so I'm not going to canvass those again, but we support all of the things in the presenters I've heard previously. We've got the same views. What we would like to see is new suburbs connected with other suburbs. A previous speaker spoke about the massive development in Tauranga. It's quite disconnected over there. I have an office in Greaton and I find it quite disconnected, hard to get round, separate communities. It's quite a bizarre place. So it's about consideration of green and large open spaces and any new development that might occur, and I'm thinking about things like Linton Park, larger spaces, not just token playgrounds. Somebody referred to playgrounds earlier, but token small areas, large areas where people can bike, walk their dog, not necessarily the redwoods, different spaces for the growth and development as the community expands, particularly out east side. Consideration of traffic feed onto Tengai Road and via existing main feeder road corridors and how that's going to affect people in those areas, noise, vibration and so on. Ensuring adequate access to the lake should further residential development be undertaken in that area. At the moment we don't really have the same access to the lake as some other areas do, possibly because of previous planning, but making sure that there is adequate access in the future for any development that should arise. We support migration of heavy industry from the Ngāpuna area, and we're mindful that as the city grows out east side, and I referred to some historic planning and zoning changes that have had consequential effects such as Lumbercube and previously Mamaku and Nongataha, making sure that anything out at Eastgate is also appropriate and sensitive to future residential neighbourhoods. We also note that it's important that the draft spatial plan looks at what's going on in other regions, all the developments over there. We've got more stores opening here than ever. As I just said, retail and the way that we shop and buy is changing. It seems bizarre that we have more and more takeaway outlets, retail outlets, and yet 40 minutes, 35 minutes from here, all of that is in a different space, albeit it's in Tauranga, but we seem to be creating the same thing. So in short, we wish to be included in ongoing discussions around the spatial plan. As I say, we largely support it, and we're hopeful that there'll be some summaries of all the submissions and changes to the draft spatial plan, and we'd like to be included in those decisions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Moorhead. Are there any questions around the table? No, fantastic. So thank you. Thank you for a very clear submission.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you, and thank you again, Peter, for your support as well. Thank you. Our next speakers are Robin Skelton, and I've got from Rotary, or do we have Gary and Paul here? Perfect, okay. From the market, yes. And you may be aware, gentlemen, you'll get a 5-minute bell, and if you'd like some questions, please do leave a couple of minutes at the end. Thank you. And that is on page 86.
Well, first of all, kia ora, katoa, katoa. I'm Gary Adlam from the Rotorua North Rotary Club. This is Paul Adlam, my father-in-law, and here with me to support today. You have seen our submission to the council. Our main focus today is to talk about our interest, which is the redevelopment of Kidal Park. We have a stake there, as you all know, that every Saturday we run the Rotorua North Charity Market that has been going next year for 30 years. It started 30 years ago down at the Novotel Hotel, and has been various other venues around town until 9 years ago when Lakes District Council came to us and said, would you like to move down to Kiddo Park to make it more vibrant, to make it more usable, and bring it back to life. So that was a fantastic opportunity to us, for our club, to actually engage and work closely with the District Council and develop it. Because we're a charity club, as you all know, it was impossible for us to actually put money into cobbling, so we actually put $25,000 into the redevelopment of the children's playground. So what I want to talk about is our future down at Kiddo Park is that obviously with the redevelopment, and I see what the council is doing, and I think when you look around this beautiful city, and I think Rotorua is the best provincial town in New Zealand, but changes are good for the right reasons if it's making progress, and I commend the council for thinking outside the square and trying to make this town a better place. In fact, I was talking to a colleague this morning from Tauranga who brought the whole work group to Rotorua for their Christmas do, because Rotorua had the amenities here, the prices were right, so they brought 25 people to Rotorua yesterday to go horse trekking, mountain biking and whatnot, so it's a credit to the council. But getting back to where we are, is the development of Kiddo Park is that we feel the need that we need to have more room there. Basically, it's an avenue on a Saturday morning where people come and set up their stalls to sell goods, to make a few extra dollars. It's a way of life. The people that come there, the storeholders who sell produce, we control that and make sure that they have it at a cheaper price in the markets. And also over the 29 years, if you go back, well, Paul and I have been involved in the market for the last 21 years, and it's been a fantastic way of putting money back into the community. If I may, I've just got some little pamphlets that I can send around, and you can just look at the councillors of what has been injected into the community from our Rotary Club.
Rick will come in, or Isabel will. Thank you very much for that, Gary.
So what we want to do is with the council today is to say that we really be interested in the redevelopment of Kiddo Park for our needs to expand the market site to a possible 100 sites. And saying that, we can see what with this that's coming around over the last, this year's been very terrible with the wet weather, but normally between $50,000 and $60,000 is generated from that market that goes into the community. And we give scholarships out. Last year we gave out 8 scholarships of $2,000 to the needy people in Rotorua that have to go to university. We also have other programs like at Napawani Camp, where we take young kids from school that are actually going off the rails a bit, that need a little bit of leadership. That is all done through 5 Rotary clubs in Rotorua. It's done on a whole weekend. And if you have the opportunity to sit down after that weekend and read the evaluations that these children actually write down, and then thanking you as a community group for having the time to take them away and enhance their lives and give them the opportunity to prove themselves. All they want is hope and someone to believe in them. And that's part of Rotary. That's what we do. We have all these fantastic programs, but all this is achievable by our Rotary market. Over the years, we've had various other fundraising activities, which has been very hard with Internal Affairs over the last 10 years to actually have some of these programs. So our sole income for our Rotorua community that we dish out every year comes from our Kiddo market. So we need to work closely with the council and various other groups like Ngāti Whakawi, Pukaroa, to keep that development going, to actually enable us to provide these funds for our community.
Thank you. Would you like some questions now?
Excellent.
Who has a question for Gary? Anyone around the table like to? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Just a matter of personal interest, and that is, having sort of visited the market at various times, I'm surprised at how few people, stallholders, are actually from Rotorua. They all seem to be from surrounding districts. In expansion, are you going to be able to do anything to sort of get more local people involved?
Yes, we are. And that's a good question. It just shows you how good people the other directors come and support Rotorua, because our market is the market in the Bay of Plenty, and it's the best place to be on a Saturday morning. But with increasing the spaces, we want to cater for everyone. Like we used to have little boot sales and whatnot, and all our market sites now are 3 metres by 3 metres. By splitting it up in different divisions and restricting the amount of people that come down with food and other items, we want to bring back the people that have crafts and that sort of stuff. So that's why we need to do it. A lot of people come down and they think that a 3 metre by 3 metre site is too big, but if we have an opportunity to actually make some slightly smaller sites there for boot sales, we can cater for everyone.
Further question? Yes, Councillor Bentley.
Yeah, for the market side of things, do you find that the parking down there is sufficient, or do you think that could be improved upon too?
It could be greatly improved upon. At the moment, we are managing, but in previous discussions with different groups in the council, when we started about 6 or 7 years ago about the redevelopment of the council, we were told this is going to happen and that was going to happen. But now we've made, in the last, I suppose, year, we've made a heap of progress through the things that have been, or opportunities that have been offered to us, and the new plan that has been offered to us at the moment is going to have a massive increase in parking sites and make it a lot safer.
Yeah, it's certainly lovely to hear the amount of support that you've had from the community for your market. And I know you are a very, very well-loved market, and it makes a difference, the longevity, for people to know where you are and to be able to find you easily. And I'm particularly interested in your wish to do a revegetation plan as part of council's work, because that, again, is another great community initiative.
Well, we've got the members in our club, and that's one way of paying back and having a close working relationship with the Lakes District Council, is that we have the members who are available and we're looking for all opportunities to serve the community, and that's one way with working with you guys and actually having a better communication process.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to talk to us in support of where we're heading, and we look forward to working with your Rotary Club in the future.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you Thank you. Now, our next speakers are Mike Vincent and Tony Bradley, the Lake Okaraka Association, and that's on page 93. Welcome, gentlemen. Just one mic at a time on whoever's speaking. Thank you, and you'll get a 5-minute bell. Otherwise, we get a little bit of feedback. Thank you.
Okay, kia ora. My name is Mike Vincent, and I'm here with Tony Bradley, and we are representing the Lake Okaraka Community Association. Overall, we're pleased that the Rotorua Lakes Council has a vision for the future, but we have some concerns about references to Lake Okaraka in your spatial plan. And at Okaraka, there are diverging views on about growth, but generally it is felt that any expansion that impacts on the lake edge or the natural beauty of the environment would meet some opposition, and we would like the council to remove the statements about residential growth out of the spatial plan, as we don't think the community has agreed to this. Also, the plan talks about enhanced neighbourhood centres. It's not really clear what an enhanced neighbourhood centre is, but at Okaraka, and talking to people, there seems to be little or no support for, say, shopping centres at the place. And once again, we would like this removed from the spatial plan, as the community has not agreed to it. Overall, because of these two items, we're concerned that if the draft spatial plan is adopted unaltered, it will be taken that the community has agreed to what is proposed. And we know that that we had consultation meetings out at the lake, but these were not actually greatly populated by people from the community, and there was people from outside the community who were talking there, and we don't think you can infer the statements you've made from those meetings and put them in your plan. That's us.
Short and sweet. Excellent. I'll open that up for questions. Any questions? No? Around the table? No? Thank you. We have certainly... Councillor Gould.
When you talk about strong consultation with the community, are you talking about just the Lake Okaraka community or the Lake Rotorua community as well, if the Plains Farm got developed into either lifestyle blocks or forestry or whatever they decide to do?
Well, you'd have to consult with both communities because the farm does, impact on both catchments. So we're here to talk about a Karika, but obviously it would be unfair not to talk to Tarawera as well.
The Sturt has a question. Oh, now they're coming out. Okay, Councillor Sturt, and then Mr. Berryman.
We've certainly had mixed messages. Some people are calling for some development, as long as the character of Lake Karaka is retained. You're saying no development. Basically, what you're saying by removing those references to expansion of the existing village, if we remove that, that means we're signalling to the community there's no expansion of Karaka. So, how do you think the rest of the community would react to that sort of scenario?
We don't have a mandate as such to say for the whole locker, but from what we've had, and we've taken a lot of calls, there are a lot of concerned people out there because it's in the spatial plan now, and so everyone thinks that resource consent's to be getting granted for a subdivision. And obviously, there's got to go through a big plan change and things like that before you even get close to doing something like that. But so there's a lot of concerned people. But personally, I think you've got, since I've been living out there for 2 years, you've got a nice village feel. You've got to be very careful. I'm all about growth and building stuff as well, but you've got a certain area, the lake's a certain size. You don't just want to keep, because it's a nice area now, let's keep pushing out. And there's certain areas for growth and there's certain areas I don't think you need to. And I think the lakes areas, we've got to be very careful what we do. And I realise with the farm, EBOT might be, with having the planting strips and that for the nutrients going into the lake. There's ways of getting around that now with farmers having to do with rivers and stuff like that, putting the vegetation strip around the edges and stuff like that. So saying that you've got to turn it into a housing development to protect the lake, I think is a little bit not quite correct. So, yeah.
The Berryman Camp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question is shortly built on Councillor Sturt's one, because I must admit I'm a little bit confused. In terms of Karaka expansion of the existing village, from the group that you're with and meet with and everything, is there anything the community actually wants? So that's a bit abrupt, but with the dual, I'm confused as to whether there are actually any additions that you think are required out there, because the feel that I'm getting from a number of the presentations is nothing. And if that's fine, that's cool, but I just wanted to check.
Well, I think what we're feeling is that the plan is making some statements, and that there hasn't been wide enough consultation, and that so I don't think overall that people are totally opposed to changes, but we would like to have more consultation about what those changes look like and how they're implemented. I mean, the best way to answer it.
So, are there any further questions? Yes.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
The last statement that the gentleman made, how is that different to what happens now, where if there are changes to district plans or spatial plans, the community as a whole, not just the area affected, has to be consulted? That's the rules under the what we're dealing with, is it not?
Absolutely, and I think the Lakes A zone did not get canvassed in the last district plan, because from a legislation point of view, it hadn't been in place for 10 years, so we were unable to review it at that point. It will be coming up for review at some point in the future, in which obviously the community has, and I expect there'll be lots of people that will submit on that when that is open for submissions. So this is really future-proofing our district, and it's trying to avoid, the whole point of the spatial plan is to try and crystal ball gaze to some degree, so that we don't end up with the problems that some of our neighbours have had with unrestricted development that really has no character, no heart, very little community. And we do appreciate that communities that have had very little change may well be a little bit frightened with the speed of this. I can assure you it's a far-reaching document, and as you've said yourself, Mr. Bradley, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So I hope that does somewhat reassure you and the people out there.
Yeah, I think that's probably where the biggest concern is, because if we agree to this being in the spatial plan, then when it does come for a review, you're going to say, well, obviously it's in the spatial plan. So that's why the people out there, well, the majority of people want that taken out of the spatial plan, because if we agree and leave it in there, it's already got past first part, is what people think out there.
Okay, well, just to clarify, the spatial plan will inform the district plan rolling reviews. So they are really as a guide, as a suggestion, as a place for the community to then submit on when that gets put into a district plan review.
So does that have to have now, when you've got the big circle around it? Why can't it be future? Because that's where people, if they see now, I'm just talking about the general public out there. Obviously, I know how everything's got to go through all the processes, but for the general public, they don't want to see the now. They want to, you can always, if we could change it to future, I think they'd be happy, because then they obviously know it's got to go through the same channels.
Exactly.
But in their head, they're thinking now,
yes,
the diggers are coming, sort of thing. So
yes. We'll certainly take that feedback back on board. Are there any other?
I think just to sum it up, is the people consider that if it's included, written down in the spatial plan, it'll become a truism. It's written down, and people will believe that it's well, you must have agreed to this at some point or other.
Fair comment. We've certainly had a lot of submissions back from Lake Karaka, so we and some for and against some of the issues raised in the spatial plan. So thank you for taking the time to make the presentation today, your submission. We have two more submitters, but they are not here yet. So just grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Until such time, we will be breaking for lunch at 12:30. So if we do not have anyone turn up in the next 10 or 15 minutes, then we will break then. Thank you. Nā koe, nā whāinga, please, if you'd like to join us at the table, thank you. You have 10 minutes. A little bell will go, just catch your breath. I appreciate you have just run in. A little bell will remind you when you have 5 minutes to go, and if you would like the councillors and community board and board members to ask questions, you'll need to leave a couple of minutes at the end for that to happen. And in front of you is a microphone with a purple button, so just push that when you're ready to start. Page, yes, it's and page 95 for the councillors and board members. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, ngā mihi, kia koutou. Ko ngā whāinga kiri ona winiata ahau. I'm a descendant of Te Aroa. So my submission is for a building for the rust sleepers, homeless rust sleepers in Rotorua. I've been working extensively with them for the past year, serving breakfast from my vehicle in the cold winter mornings. I've been successful in housing Kamaya Thompson, aged 32, 2 years on the streets, born with spina bifida. We monitor, she's on a 3-month trial, house tenancy trial. Homeless 5-year Michael, he was homeless 5 years, 2 years in the bamboo bushes here. I've housed 11 years homeless Joe. He is staying with us in our, with my whānau and I, in a backyard batch. And also currently supporting a 32-week pregnant Indian woman that has just recently gone into women's refuge. She needs to get income and other things sorted. Our home. We have a night building based at Te Koutu Marae. It's open 7 till 7. It is police patrolled by Sergeant Lehai Hohaia. So whenever I have people staying there, it's not every day, it's not every night, but when I do, I arrange night patrol with him. Where are we for time? Okay. It's not, so the majority of homeless people squatting around the town, businesses aren't liking it. It's obvious because they serve trespass notices. It's not easy trying to house these people. Most of them, the ones that I've helped are an exception. They're ready for housing. But the rest, I wouldn't, they need to be worked with extensively. Only because we've had problems housing one person and she's tried to fix the world with a 2-bedroom unit. Almost getting herself booted out and her neighbour robbed. So we had to help assist the police with that, with information with that, coming back to homeless sector. Yes.
We're open for questions. Are you happy to have some questions? That would be lovely. I have Mrs. Trumper who would like to ask a question. Thank you.
Kia ora. Have you been working with any of the other organisations that are working specifically People Link? You know, that People Link, which used to be Linkage.
Link People, I
Link.
engaged with Michelle Tiriana.
Yes.
Yeah, on one occasion, I've referred a couple of people to her.
Because I know they're taking long-term approach and working one-on-one, and I just wondered whether there was a way you could connect with them, perhaps.
Oh yes, I do connect with them. as I say extensively, I practically live with these people to help them. You got to live with them to know them. You sort of got to live with them. It's an everyday thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And other groups, Women's Refuge, Professionals Real Estate, St Vincent de Paul, Hospice.
What about Lifewise Trust with their facility?
So we have a friendship with the drop-in centre, Caroline. Talk now and again with Tiny. Yeah, we were there this morning.
Because I think there's, you've got an amazing talent if you can take these guys on, because some of them are, really hard work. And being a beneficiary advocate myself, I kind of understand and empathise where you're sitting. So do Work and Income give you any assistance whatsoever in housing? Because I know that they do make emergency appointments available. Well, basically there are no appointments to be made. You can just walk in and have something available.
So we don't liaison with anyone there, it's just we get in line to queue. We see process too. We just got to get in line. I've stood in line many times. Then be told to phone.
That's something you might need to take up with Jackie, the manager at Work and Income.
I have questions from Councillor Kumar, then Mr Berryman Camp, then Mrs Mulkey, and then I'll draw a close to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Wainga Kiriona, for your submission. I empathise with your plight and what you're going through. I came across an incident yesterday where there was someone homeless a little while ago. I'll get to my question. A little while ago, he was really able-bodied, moving around. But today, he's in a state of despair where even winds won't help him because he's got no aboard. Do you have the same situation with your residents as well, or people that you're trying to help, that if they don't have an address, a fixed address, or even a temporary address of some sort, that they don't get any support from winds at all?
Yes. Or they get quarter of a benefit, a third of a benefit, like $50 to $100 a week.
Mr Berryman Camp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and thank you for the mahi that you do and for your presentation. What I was wanting to get some clarity on, and I'm just having a look at your form here, outlines feedback, homes that match our needs, provide a building near town for rough sleepers. What I needed to get a bit of a grasp for, are you talking about like emergency accommodation overnight, or are you talking about more something that people can move into on a longer term? What exactly is the sort of facility that you're wanting to provide feedback to the council about that our community requires?
Okay, something like a portacom, so I had an idea about Tuaranga o Raukawa, how they have the portacoms, sort of like marae. It's just a hall with an ablution, kitchen.
So, but just that, so that's more for short-term acute need rather than somewhere that people can stay longer term, or
Yes.
or both.
A short term.
Finally, Miss Mulkey. Okay, lovely, lovely.
Tēnā koe.
Thank you very much, Ms Kiriona, for your submission, and I appreciate it was a challenge for you to get here, but we do certainly appreciate you turning up, and thank you very much. All right, on that note, we're going to break for our lunch now, and we'll close our... No, we don't. I don't need to close. That's all right. We won't be closing. We're just going to be breaking for lunch because we're going to be recommencing the rest of our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting at 1 o'clock. So thank you everyone for attendance, and thank you everyone for appearing today and for sitting in and listening. We'll see you at 1 o'clock.